Yep.
So I read over the forum. It seems like you guys got a new puppy. You have an older residing dog. Was it like 8 to 9 years old? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you're starting to see your dog having aggressive tendencies towards the puppy, or is this in certain contexts, or is the older dog kind of searching for the puppy?
He's not necessarily like searching out the dog. It's more around like toys or food, and sometimes it's even around like he is. I guess when the dog space, I don't know. I guess if the dog gets too close to him, you'll growl it off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And are there any points where they're like social and they're playing with each other, or is it usually tension?
They haven't played like with each other at all. We can play them. I say it's kind of like toddlers, how they play next to each other, but not really together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can do walks with them, fine,
Okay.
no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in the house. Yeah, there's
when you do the walks, are they walking with one person, or are they walking with each individual person?
With one person usually. Usually I'm the one out on a walk with them. Okay. He's usually working, so I am out walking and doing stuff with him during the day.
Okay. During that walk, are they indifferent to each other?
Yeah, for the most. I mean, the puppy seems to want to be next to the older dog. Mm-hmm. She gravitates towards him, and he doesn't mind if she's right next to him. He sometimes, after a while and their confidence is built up, she'll start like licking at his face like puppies do. Yeah. And at first he'll kind of turn away, and then eventually he'll give her little growls and everything, but it's a polite growl. So
is the older dog, does he have dog friends at all?
No.
Okay. Is he dog reactive?
Out on walks on leashes, he does usually growl and bark.
Okay. What do you walk him on?
A 6-foot leather leash.
Okay, leather leash. And then is it like a flat collar, harness, pinch collar?
Just a flat collar.
Just flat collar. Okay. So no dog friends, and then leash reactive all the time when he sees a dog, or like sometimes?
I'd say sometimes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I think when he's caught by surprise, somebody comes around the corner, that he was expecting, he's more likely to react. But if he sees
or
the dog
if we're not paying attention.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. If we see the dog early and just let him know that we acknowledge the dog's there, then he's fine.
Okay. And what's the breed of the older dog?
He's a lab shepherd mix.
Okay. How big?
He's 80 pounds.
80 pounds. And the puppy is what breed?
Bloodhound and shepherd mix.
Shepherd. Okay. Do we have an idea of how big we're expecting that dog to get?
Probably pretty big. I mean, we know for sure that one parent was purebred bloodhound and one parent purebred German shepherd. She's got some pretty big paws, so we're assuming about the same size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And with the puppy, I'm also assuming like just potty training stuff as well, or is the puppy doing well with that?
She's doing okay.
Okay. Have you done, and this is a new addition, correct? Like you just got the puppy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Less than a week.
We had 2 dogs for a long time.
For 9 years.
Yeah, we had our other dog. She passed away back in August.
Okay. And were they playful with each other? The other older dog?
Yes.
Yeah. Especially when they're younger. I mean, as she got the dog that passed, as she got older up in years, they didn't play as often anymore.
Correct. Did you get them at the same time, or was one there first?
The one that passed we had for about 4 years before we adopted the one we currently have.
Okay. And then how was that at the start? How was that initially? Did they just warm up to each other, or was there tension in the beginning?
No, the other dog was a very social, very friendly dog, well socialized and stuff. So there was really no tension in there. I mean, there might be something if they're, they just talk to each other, like growl each other off if they had a bone or something like that. But I mean, nothing. Yeah, there's no tension between them.
Okay. And the puppy, female or male?
Female.
Female. Okay. All right. So, were you trying to do a board and train for both with the goal of getting them to coexist, or are you trying to do the puppy? What's the thought process there?
Our thinking was to do them both, to try and work through some of these like the coexisting issues, just to, because we've seen him, he's very loyal with a pack, and we know that he can accept her as part of the pack, but just the proper way to do that, just to kind of get them to be a pack together.
Okay. And I'm sorry, how old is the puppy again?
She's about 3 months.
Okay, so she's young. Okay. So what you're seeing is actually normal.
Okay.
Especially with an older senior dog to a puppy.
Okay.
So I don't consider your dog aggressive.
Okay.
Did you have any thoughts that your dog was being aggressive, or did you understand just that conversation that was going on there?
Well, I mean, there were times where he would fairly, what appeared to at least us, fairly aggressively grab her. He never like hurt her, never pierced skin, but I mean, he would put teeth on, and kind of pin her down. And that, and there's probably our reactions, some of the things that's hard is that, is he reacting because we're becoming tense over the situation as opposed to it. And, so yeah, I think we were expecting some of these things. It just seemed like he was going a little bit farther than we.
Just kind of like not to that degree.
Right.
Yeah. So that's normal.
Okay.
Because if your dog was aggressive, you'd be telling me there was punctures. So I had a consultation that I did a few months back. Are you guys familiar with Corsos?
No.
The breed? Bad's in a pit bull, but like a 1.5 to 2 times the size, very large dog, right?
Okay.
So they had a Corso, and then they got a Corso puppy, and the same thing, right? Like 5-6-year-old dog, and then they bring home a Corso puppy, and within, I think, not even 2 weeks, the dog went after the puppy twice with punctures. Okay. And one was over a resource, and another was, I believe, the puppy was just walking by, and the dog just decided to go.
Right.
So, I told him like that's in dog world, it's technically normal. In human world, not normal, not acceptable, because obviously if that puppy dies, we care.
Yeah.
In the dog world, they don't care. Okay. So as I was talking to them, essentially they were like, so what you're saying is not to keep the puppy. I said, exactly. Because Corso is about a roughly 130 pound, 150 pound dog. How big they get, what breed or whatever. I was like, do you really want to fight or break apart 2 of these dogs if they get in a dog fight in the future? Right. And the answer was like, no. I'm like, yeah, there you go. Plus, because the bites were severe, there were punctures, right, within 2 weeks.
Right.
That's a high degree of a bite within a very short time frame. Okay.
Right.
So that's something I take into consideration as well. So it's normal in the beginning for there to be tension. Okay. Especially when you have such a big age gap, okay? Because typically puppies, of course, they're puppies and puppy type energy. And people actually tend to excuse a lot of these puppies bite, they bark, they nip and they bite, they pull at your pants, right? And they're loud and this and that. And yes, they're like that if you allow them.
Right.
Okay. So there's a video on YouTube that's a really good kind of visual. And it's actually, I think, a golden retriever, a yellow lab. And she has her 2-month-old puppies, and she's behind a barrier, and the puppies are in the room being puppies, and they let her in so that they can nurse. And when she comes in, have you seen it? Yeah.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, they're all crazy, right? They're jumping on her, right? And what does she do? She growls, nips, and snaps, right? She looks aggressive, but all the puppies calm down.
They all just lay down, like 9 of them.
Yep.
So she came in and said, I don't want you to behave this way when I enter the room. Okay. But for humans, when we enter the room and we see that cute little puppy jumping and barking and all that stuff, we think it's cute.
Right.
But it's actually it can actually be unhealthy, and a lot of times it is unhealthy.
Right.
Okay? So, because you have to think like dog,
Yep.
Violet.
and we tend to think like
Violet.
human. So what your dog is doing is setting boundaries to your puppy. Okay. And so in the beginning, and you guys are like maybe the third or fourth family. Is that the puppy? Yep.
Yeah.
this is a little one.
She's getting into trouble.
She's
since
a
we're
good
not-
size for 3 months.
Yeah.
She's a decent size.
Yeah.
So you guys are like the third or fourth family with this exact problem that I've talked to in like within the past month.
Okay.
So it's normal, it's common. So there's a couple of ways that this can work out, realistically speaking.
Mhm.
1-2 weeks is a blink of an eye.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's stuff that, yes, of course we can do, and we can try to press stuff as much as possible.
Mhm.
But also we're a daycare and we have all these other things, right? So it's not the same setting as if you were to have your dogs coexisting.
Right.
And then
Mhm.
time, really. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an idea of how we would approach it to help you, and the realistic expectations, and then you kind of just decide how you want to go about it. Okay.
Mhm.
And of course how we train, because there's other kind of components to that as well.
Mhm.
So in most cases, when I talk to families just like this, I'll tell them, most people come in and bring in the puppy like, hey, like, be friends.
Mhm.
And then we get tension.
Right.
What I tell people to do is actually don't do that.
Mhm.
I say residing dog and puppy do not interact. Okay. So like, let's say you had a barrier up, and this is if the residing dog takes to the barrier, because sometimes that can add more tension because now there's separation. Okay.
Right.
But a lot of times with the puppy, it allows them to coexist within the same room,
Mhm.
or the puppy could be in the kennel and the dog's walking around and they're sniffing at each other and stuff, right? And we're looking for any escalation.
Mhm.
Okay? If there's escalation, we can correct it. Otherwise, the dog might sniff and go whatever and like walk away. And that might be for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And for the pup, where it's very controlled and they're coexisting, but in a safe fashion where it's
Right.
not forced.
Okay.
The next thing that we're doing at that period of time is we're walking those dogs together.
Mhm.
Walking is the best way to build a relationship between dogs. So I'm glad that you're doing that. And that's why I was like asking all those questions, okay? Because it gives me an idea of where we're at.
Right.
So once I start to see the residing dog not care about the puppy, then we start pushing towards coexistence where there is no barrier.
Okay.
Okay. And it can take a couple of weeks. It might take a couple of months.
Okay.
Okay. But you're not putting pressure. So the common thought processes now is that like dogs love everyone and everything type of deal, right?
Mhm.
And that's actually why there's so many issues, because people are kind of taking that approach.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you
We
have
know.
yes, and I don't care if you have the friendliest golden retriever, I would still do it the exact same, because you don't know until it's a problem, and then once a problem, it's a problem.
Mhm.
Okay. So like a couple of years ago, I had a guy who had like 5 dogs, and he brought in a new dog thinking they were going to be great because it was great until 5 dogs, and they all attacked the dog. Okay. And then he's like, I need you to help me fix this. I'm like, that we have 6 dogs to train.
Mhm.
Like, you're going to pay me like, that would be like $1,000, you know, for working with each dog for just an hour a piece. Like you're at a point where it's too far gone. You created a problem. It's really hard to recover from this, right? So we always do precaution, always. Okay.
Mhm.
And then we do things to help build bonds. So they're coexisting. It's not forced. We already know the puppy's a puppy. We're expecting puppy sociability. It's the residing dog.
Right.
Okay. The other thing is, when they do start to coexist, we have to put boundaries on the puppy, and ideally we do it before the other dog does.
Okay.
So like, let's say your dog is on the couch, the residing dog, and the puppy starts to walk over to like, hey, what are you doing up there? Right.
Mhm.
I'm expecting it's going to be a problem.
Mhm.
It would be a problem with my dogs because they're the senior dogs.
Right.
And they're going, it's kind of like what's that movie, Mean Girls or something, where like there's like the table and only like
Right.
like the cool girls can sit there,
Right.
right? It's kind of the same thing as like, oh no, this is our couch, right? You're not old enough to come up here. But the way they set that boundary is nipping and biting. That's
Right.
their language. Okay.
Okay.
So if I were to see the puppy going to the couch, I would actually correct the puppy.
Okay.
So
Okay.
then the residing dog goes, oh, cool. You're establishing the rules. I don't need to.
Gotcha.
Because people they give their puppies that freedom immediately. They
Mhm.
give them, like, you can be on the couch, you can be on the bed, this and that, right? And
Right.
it causes tension. Because the other dog's like, what the hell? I've been here for 9 years.
Right.
Okay. So it's kind of like, as a kid, like, imagine like your parents like adopted another child and just like treat them the exact same or maybe even better than you. It
Right.
causes tension.
Right.
Right? You're like, what the hell? Like, I'm actually your kid, and like this guy comes home, right? It's
Right.
the same
Yes.
similar kind of concept. Okay.
Right.
So over time, and this could be over time as in a year or a couple of years, that puppy is slowly being allowed to have certain liberties that the other dog has. Because by that point in the future, he's already been like, yeah, you've been here for long enough, and you're not a nuisance. So sure, like I'll let you come up here. Okay.
Gotcha.
Now it can also work out where that never happens, and the residing dog goes like, nope. Because what if the energies are not compatible, right? What if your puppy doesn't outgrow like the puppy energy style, and your other dog's like, I'm 9 years old, man. Like, I'm not going to deal with this,
Right.
right? We're the most we can then ask for is just coexistence.
Right.
Puppy leaves older dog alone. Older dog leaves puppy alone. Okay,
Right.
they're not friends. They don't sleep together. They don't nap together. They don't cuddle together. They just walk together, and that's it.
Right.
Okay, it is what it is.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the hard part. There is no real guarantee of how this would move forward.
Right.
Like, what I would do is we would set a foundation, tell you what we did, help you through it, and say it's time. Right? Does this all make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Question so far?
I don't know if I have any specific questions. You know, it's been, I guess, reassuring in some ways. What you're telling us is normal behavior. It was more than we were expecting at first, but
so, like,
I mean,
you know,
we're
when you said,
just a little bit higher, it's just a little bit higher intensity from him than we thought.
Yeah.
But I see the behaviors you're talking about, and
right. So, like, when you said he put his mouth and like pinned her, right? That's him kind of setting the boundary of, or the hierarchy of, I'm above you.
right.
Okay? And it doesn't look pretty, but that's dog. That's natural dog. Okay. And
Right.
trust me, if he obviously had the opportunity to full on bite, he did not.
Right.
That's the big factor there. Okay. Is there was no real, at least from what I'm picking up, intent to do harm. It was more so to prove a point.
Right.
Okay. So with having dogs, it's also like kind of respecting dog for dog. I'm not saying that you cannot disagree with the behavior. It's just, you know, I think people have one notion in their head, and then when they see it the other way, they're like, holy crap, like, I didn't know this was a thing, right?
Yeah.
So with the older dog, so the issue that we're going to have here is, did you guys do any research on us on how we train and our approach to training and everything?
Yeah, Kelly had looked into it a bit.
Yeah, I looked on your website a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, so you're aware that we use prong and e-collar. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for your puppy is 3 months, right?
Yes.
So your puppy, the approach we would use for training for her at max at this age, because you're leaving the 13th, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I did another consultation for someone who has a puppy that they're doing a boarding train as well. And they're going to do a longer, like 4-week program. So I actually told her, like, you know what, if you're going to put that much money into it and that much time, wait till the puppy's older so we can do lifelong training. Okay. In your case, your puppy is a little too young, that I wouldn't do remote training with that dog. Okay. The most we could do is prong collar, which is a collar like this. Like you would. Have you seen these before?
Yep.
Okay. So the prong collar is meant to mimic a mother's bite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like, let's say we see the puppy going to, with the older dog, we would want to correct that, and we can correct that using that tool.
Right.
Because it's a biting motion to deter the behavior. Okay.
Right.
And we're saying this puppy, respect this dog's space. I don't care what you do, but just leave the dog alone.
Right.
Okay. Or when you say like the puppy starts to lick the other dog and then the dog starts to growl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the moment I see that, I would already correct the puppy, so then your dog doesn't even need to growl.
Right.
Okay? And what we should start to see is the puppy will naturally begin to deter from certain behaviors
Mm-hmm.
and not annoy the dog. And
Right.
that's where things can start to, because once the dog's like, oh, you're not that much of a nuisance, then they start to like open up.
Right.
Right. And I had this happen to a client a few months back, same thing. But they were smaller dogs, got a puppy, and the puppy was just too much. And I told them to correct the puppy. And for them, in a couple of weeks, they started to coexist. They weren't playing, but they were coexisting, and the growling and all that stuff had stopped. Okay?
Right.
Because they were being proactive.
Mm-hmm.
So the prong collar gives you a means of correcting your puppy so that your dog doesn't feel like they have to. Okay.
Right.
It also allows us to have a little bit more of a reliable level of obedience. Your puppy, again, is only 3 months, so don't expect anything spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that's going to be like, where you're going to fall short is on off leash stuff like recall, because you're going to have to take the leash off. So then the dog learns like, oh, like you don't have the leash on, so you can't make me come back. And that's where it falls short. Okay. With remote collar, we have both on and off leash control. Okay?
Right.
For the older dog, it's really, the only issue I see is because it's an older dog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's like, because we train to a high level, we
Mm-hmm.
want off leash reliability.
Mm-hmm.
From what I'm picking up, I mean, do you take or would you take your dogs anywhere to be off leash or anything like that?
Yep. We have in the past, and we would. We'll take him to Oz Park and stuff and throw a ball and things like that.
Okay. So the value in having an off leash trained dog is, so we used to train at Oz Park during the summer because it's crazy busy.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter what was going on. We had attention, we had control, but then also like if something happened out the blue, like somebody else goes like, oh, your dog is off leash, so I'm going to just bring my dog off leash. And
Yeah.
All the time.
Yep. Is one, you have a means of pulling the dog out. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or two, should anything escalate, we have a means of stopping and again pulling our dog out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a client who goes to Oz Park to play ball with her dog as well. Her dog is social. And one day, her dog and another dog went after the tennis ball at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that triggered a fight. Okay?
Right.
So she had to max out her collar and do a continuous, which is the harshest correction you can do. And I'll explain more about that later.
Mm-hmm.
But her dog 180'd out of it immediately. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So then she called me. She was upset because her dog yelped and all that stuff. She felt bad about it.
Yeah.
And she's like, did I do the right thing? And I said, yes. I was like, because you weren't expecting that to happen. You didn't know that was going to happen because that never happened to her before.
Mm-hmm.
And it triggered into a fight. And because of what you did, you pulled your dog out within a second. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what would have happened if you hadn't done that.
Right.
Okay? There could have been punctures, there could have been tears, and there's vet bills, right? And then there's also the how to say the fallback of the just the actual fight itself, right? There's like so much repercussions that can come from it, and I was like, and you essentially prevented all that from happening just because of what you did. Okay.
Right.
Same dog. She was at Travis Park, and her dog was off leash playing with dogs, and a rabbit ran straight through the field. And her dog had a very good prey or very high prey drive. So when the rabbit went, because she was playing, she just snapped and switched gears and chased after the rabbit, almost going into the street.
Right.
But again, she was able to max it out and override and get the dog. And those are emergency type situations. So that's where e-collar comes into play. It's the only tool that gets you as close to 100% reliability on a leash and in an emergency type situation.
Right.
Okay. So this is why for our dogs 6 months and older, we train only on a remote collar. Okay? Because I have a very high standard for training. So there's 3 primary styles of training. There's food only, positive reinforcement. There's gentle leader, which is positive reinforcement based, which is more a balanced approach. That's in the middle, and then there's e-collar. Okay, positive only has like single digit success rate. Okay? Because if there's something more rewarding than what you have, your dog is going to opt for that instead. Okay, prong and gentle leader are better on leash, but when you remove the leash, we no longer have guaranteed control. E-collar doesn't matter. On, off leash, emergency situation, food, no food, we have control. Okay, or can get control. So that's why I tell people at 6 months, just train your puppy or dog with that tool, because it's lifelong and you get that level of control. So like, why would I opt for anything else if I know I got something that gets me as close to 100% as possible? Does that make sense? Yeah. Your puppy is just too young. Okay, so that one, what we would do is, the best, to get the most value out of your investment would be the prong collar. Okay? Now, if you're doing a longer board and train with the puppy, then I would say, like, sure, we could do remote because we have more time to ease the puppy into it. So the young lady I spoke to earlier is going to bring her dog back at 4 to 4.5 months, because the dog is currently 13 weeks. Okay, so we're about the same age as your puppy. Because she's going to do a long 4-week program that we can start sooner, because we can ease the puppy into it. In your case, we have 2 weeks. So I go, it's too short of a time to try to do more advanced training. Does that make sense? With your adult dog, you can do that. Now, with these tools, the other thing it affords you is you can correct tension amongst the dogs, and there not be any confrontation. So one thing that you mentioned was if the older dog has like a treat or a toy or something, is that correct? And there's like growling?
Yeah, like for example, he really likes his ball, his tennis ball. That's his favorite toy right now, and she's showing a lot of interest in balls as well. We have a variety of different toys, but the ball is what she's just by herself gravitated towards. Okay. So now you have 2 dogs that are driven for kind of the similar same.
You want the ball that he has, right?
Yeah.
So that could be a bit of resource guarding, because I think you said this happened with the previous dog as well, right?
Yeah, we'd see that over like bones, like high value treats.
Okay, but at some point they were fine with like the balls with each other.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was just like more higher value stuff.
Yeah, and they would listen to each other. It's just like, at the time he was the younger one, and so he would approach the older one usually when she was chewing, and she'd
just growl.
She'd tell him no, and he'd turn around.
Yeah, so he's just passing on the tradition, right?
Yeah.
So that stuff we can correct the puppy, and ideally you would correct the puppy, right? Because he's just setting boundaries. But you could also, like, if things were to escalate, okay, with the remote collar tool, we would be able to resolve it one way or another, okay? To where, let's say he's got the ball and the puppy comes. Ideally, we want the puppy to naturally just deflect, respect that space, and he doesn't have to do anything, okay? But like, let's say it escalated for whatever reason one day, and he did an actual bite or something, okay? Is then we would have to teach him that when the puppy is approaching, that he actually just naturally surrenders. Once he surrenders, we also want to correct the puppy, because we need to stop that behavior on the puppy's behalf, right? But it's possible to teach the dog, instead of going into confrontation, to go into avoidance. Okay, we have 4 responses to things: fight, flight, avoidance, submission. Okay, so growling would be considering fighting, right? You're confronting the issue. Flight would be running away. Is okay, I see you coming. I know there's going to be a correction, so I'm going to just hop up on the couch and leave you alone. And then submission is completely accepting, and the puppy comes, takes the ball, and walks away, and he does nothing. Okay. Avoidance is always what we aim for. Okay. I can't make him accept it, and that puts too much liability, because if the puppy comes in and one day he doesn't accept it, we got a problem. We don't want him to run away, because I don't want him to be too panicked about it, because then he's going to be scared of the puppy, and that's going to cause its own issues. And of course, we don't want him to fight either. So that would be really kind of play it by ear. It's a simple exercise, but there's nothing for me that I'm going like, this is a problem. Okay, so that's why I'm not really jumping to that conclusion quite yet. Okay. So with the board and train, you know, if we do prong with puppy and a remote with the older dog, the remote we would push to it as much as we can with the off leash obedience within that 2 week time span. With the puppy, we'll do as much with the obedience as well, right? So that's, you have one factor of control. Because the other thing is forcing coexistence, which is, okay, you go down over here and you lay down right there and you just leave each other alone. You just exist in the same room, okay?
Mhm.
And that can potentially lead to coexistence over time. It's just really structured, which is different from organic coexistence, right? Organic coexistence is what you're trying to do right now, but we just a little too quick, too fast.
Right.
So we have treadmills here. So we would treadmill train the puppy and your dog to get them used to just walking and being beside each other as our means of kind of mimicking walking, right? Moving them around, seeing how they do around each other in the space, seeing if we see any tension, correcting the puppy, kind of setting the foundation so that the puppy learns to ignore. But do be aware that this is not your home.
Right.
Right. It's going to be really hard for us to kind of replicate what you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's just not.
And that's kind of our biggest, I guess, concern about the board and train is that we know that he will behave differently outside of his home. You know,
because he does when we travel, we leave him at a cage-free daycare place, and you know they're really good about knowing the dogs, and he's not as much of a dog, and so they give him lots of breaks, and they have him sleep in his own room and things like that, just for everybody's, they know that. But I've seen him, he goes into this room full of dogs and he doesn't bark or growl or anything, you know, whereas if we're out on a walk and like we said, and he sees
or
a
if
dog,
we walked into the same room with him,
he would bark and growl. And so we understand he is very different in different situations if we're not there and that kind of thing.
Correct.
So
You one outside, empower him and give him something to protect, right? Because when you're walking with your dogs, you know when you see another dog, that's a neighbor walking their dog, or just someone in the area walking their dog, or a dog walker, right? But in the dog world, you're your own territory. That other dog over there is their own territory, right? And now we have animal instinct, okay? So that's potentially where reactivity can come from, where he's just like, hey, stay away from us. Protect my family. Okay?
Right.
Other times, it can also be the dog throwing a tantrum, going like, hey, I want to play with that dog, and like barking because that's how they communicate. Okay. But it can seem aggressive. Or it started as friendly, but then when people like hold their dog back or like rear them back and stuff, it creates more agitation, which then becomes aggressive behaviors. Okay. So it can come from a number of different places. The other thing is, think of like your dog going to a daycare where he can go into a room of dogs and not be a problem. It's kind of like, you know, if I go to a bar, I know it's going to be loud. I'm not going to go and complaining how loud the bar is.
Right.
Like, why would I even put myself there then? Right. So it's the same thing for him. He's going into like this community setting. You're not there, so there's nothing to protect. And he's just going like, okay, here's a neutral community setting. I don't have to be territorial, whatever.
Right.
Because we get dogs here that are, you know, that we've trained or that come to our daycare who are not social on leash, but off leash are great, or at the daycare are great. And it's because of that. So, yes, there's a con to the board and train, which is it's not like your
right.
What was the other thing? So I mean, you have a couple of options. One, I mean, you could just have them both trained. You walk around with one dog who's well trained off leash, or as close off leash as you can get. There is work for you to do. We set the foundation for everything, let you know what we saw, let you know what to expect, right? Because once they leave here and go back home, there's usually going to be some level of regression, right? Because it's going to be super strict here, and then they go home where it used to be not strict. But there has to be some degree of strictness in order for things to transfer over smoothly. Okay. There may be a bit of a lifestyle change. Okay. Being more strict about what we allow the puppy to do. Maybe when we give the other dog the ball and stuff like that, just being more controlling of when resources are out and stuff like that. as also a means of like just preventing things
Mhm.
until maybe when the puppy is a couple of years old, like they've been together long enough where the other dog's like, okay, sure, like we can play ball with each other or share this object. Okay. But again, we're talking a long-term thing because you also have to factor in your puppy is going to change personality wise 6 months in a year. Okay. Are two pivotal psychological shifts for puppies. And so like when I get clients who have a puppy and they're like, oh, it's the quietest puppy, so good, so calm. And I'm like, you just got your puppy and you've had him for 3 days. You think that's going to be the same dog in a few months or in a year? There's a lot of changes, just like with humans. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can help, of course, help you all along that if you ever have questions and stuff, but just things to plan for.
Right.
Okay. Questions.
I don't have any.
Are you familiar with what an e-collar is?
Yeah, it's does like electrical charge right on the neck. It's
Right.
just remote controlled.
Correct. So you control it. There's varying levels from 0 to 127, and it goes in increments of 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127. So it's more commonly known as a shock collar. Okay. The term shock one comes from when they first came out, they only had like 5 levels. Okay. So 5 and 127 are the same in terms of output, but I have 122 more divisions. So before, your dog would ignore 2 or yelp on 3. So then there's no 2.5. Okay. With mine, 20, 30, 24, 26, 25, I can really fine tune it. So it's much more refined. Also, it's not electricity or electrocution. It's electric, but not electricity is how I like to term it. So they actually use this technology on humans. Have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist? Have you ever had stim? When they move your muscles?
Yep.
That's what you call it. Okay. So it's a current that just moves the muscles that it's making contact with. So there's 2 probes and they would go into the dog's neck, just like sitting on it like that, and it would cause the muscles to contract. Okay. So when you went to the physical therapist or chiropractor, I'm assuming they started low and then worked their way up. And they said, tell us when it's too much. And you said, and they go, okay. And they lowered it. And they said, what about that? And you said, that feels fine. They're like, okay, we're going to let it do its work, right? Same thing with e-collar. We start low, we work our way up. Your dog will tell us what's too low, what's too high. If they're not listening, it's too low. If they're yelping, it's too high. And we got to find that middle ground. Okay. So people usually think when we do remote training, it's come in and then just make the dog yelp and then max it out and all that stuff. And it's really not how it works at all. Okay. And if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see, we've been recording everything, of course, and just putting it up on YouTube. And we did it in response to COVID because it's just purely verbal instruction now that people go back to watch it to reference. But also it just showed everyone like, this is how, like we were in Oz Park training dogs and getting reliable obedience because of this. All through, I wasn't touching the dog. It was all verbal instruction, right? That's how effective it is when you know how to use it correctly. Okay. The problem with e-collar is people feel bad about correcting their dog a lot of times, or they perceive it like they're stuck on, I'm shocking my dog. If you take it off and you press the button, do you see any electricity there? They're like, no. I'm like, well, then you're not shocking your dog, right? Because electricity there. And it's just that factor that people can't get over. And the reason why remote and tools like the prong collar are effective are because dogs are physical animals. By each other, right? And you're seeing a prime example of that with the older dog to the puppy. So they're all about physicality because as humans, we're physical too. Like we show affection physically, we hold hands, we hug, we kiss, but we also can become aggressive. But we punch and kick, and we don't bite like a dog does, right? A dog's bites, that's what makes it worse. So, so the e-collar, I tell people to look at it as like a bite on a button, right? You press the button, there's going to be a contraction, and the way we layer it in is so the dog understands what it means. And if it can mean don't do that, or it can mean do that. Okay, so we have obedience and we also have behavior. I can correct the dog for jumping, but I can also teach the dog how to come to me when I call them with the e-collar. So I get both components. Questions about any of that stuff so far?
Nope.
Trying to think here. So like, let's say, and this is just kind of worst case scenario. okay, so that you're ready for it. Is another con to the board and train is we're professional trainers. We do this all day. Is the training's really tied to us. Okay. And then you have the follow-up where we transfer to you. Okay? The e-collar is going to transfer very easy. Okay. About 70 to 80% right away transfers. It's very logical. It's very just like once you understand the concept, it just makes sense. And what we've been doing is for like the older dog, the obedience stuff that we're going to teach them, we record the first session of everything that we, okay, because that's when your dog's going to be at their worst. He's not know what it is. He doesn't know what it is. He might even freak out a bit. Okay, so you see it, your dog raw, working things. Okay, and then we send you the video. Okay, you now can watch that video. It's usually about between an hour and everything.
Sorry about that. I'm sorry. Sorry, it's bedtime.
We would send it to you, and you can watch how your dog learns and how they perform. We're trying to get to coexist to give you a reference point. At the end of the second video, I'm sorry, not second video. At the end of the second week, there would be another obedience video showing how your dog is advanced. Okay, and it's usually what we do on a long leash. That's how we start to transition the dogs to off leash. So when you show up to have your follow up, you already come in with information. Okay, and then I walk you through everything. Some stuff you'll already kind of do naturally just from what you've learned. Other stuff you'll say like, Jesse, I didn't get this concept. How does this work? And then I can coach you through it. Okay, and then I'll give you your exercises and say, take this, go home, practice your training, practice your obedience, and then set up your follow-ups when you're ready. Okay, so you don't have to set them up immediately. You can have your first session and then see how it works for you, how it carries with you. And then sounds like we have a puppy here. I don't have any puppies. There's somebody outside walking their dog. So we give you a lot of information. Take it, practice it, reinforce it. Okay. 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by. Hey, Jesse, this is where we're having problems. Schedule your next visit. Okay, what are we struggling with? Then I help you with that. You go back. You can do 2 weeks later, a month later, a week later. I don't care. You set up the next one, and then we help you with that one. Okay. So, because you get follow up, if you're doing a B&T for both of your dogs, you get follow ups with each of them. So you're going to have plenty of follow up time that's going to come through the program that you can stretch out over the course of the year or 2 years, whatever. The classes do not expire. Okay. So we've had people who did their board and train a year and a half ago. They did 4-week programs and stuff. They did a few sessions with us, and they have like a stock of classes that they've not needed to use because we were able to transfer everything clearly to them. Does that make sense? Questions?
I don't have any
questions. In terms of cost, the board and train costs are of course on the website. You will get 10% off the second dog. So your puppy, so the regular board and train is going to be more expensive for the older dog. Okay, because we can train them to a higher degree. The puppy board and train is going to be less expensive because the training that we're going to do is not going to be lifelong. It's going to be good, but you're not going to have the same level of control because it is a younger puppy, right? You get 10% off of that program. Okay. In terms of the cost of the collar, this collar runs like 25, 35 bucks. Okay. The other collar for your dog, for a dog his size, runs about 70, I'm sorry, no, it's for 70 pounds and over, runs about 325-ish with tax.
Okay.
It's an investment, but it can last you the length of your dog's life. Okay.
Mhm.
They last a really long time. I've had mine for about 8 to 9 years, no issues. The most common problem that we get is that the collar does, the battery, it's a rechargeable lithium battery, does or can die over a course of a couple of years. You go on the website, you find the battery that you need, $20, you purchase it, you go on your remote, you replace it, and you're good to go. Okay. Questions?
Nope.
So Maria will get in contact with you. We do have a number of like requests for like training and board and trains and stuff like that. If you know you're good to go, you can turn around after this consultation, shoot her an email and say, hey, like put us down for the 13th or whatever that time frame is.
Mhm.
Coordinate the follow-up and everything.
Mhm.
The follow-up expected to be about 2 hours. Okay. And it's going to be a lot of information.
Mhm.
But also remember, you'll have your videos, so you don't have to schedule your follow-up for the immediate. Once you pick them up, you can just learn from the videos, and if all that's going well, then you schedule your follow-up 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, what have you. You can
Okay.
with Maria.
Okay.
Okay.
And where are you located? Where would we have to get the dogs? In where?
Logan Square.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just by Western and Diversity. We're just
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
okay, so it's pretty easy to get to us. Anything else?
Just a question just to put into our decision making. So if we don't do the board and train with you, we would take the dogs to our regular boarding facility, which I already told you about. Do you feel that would be detrimental to their relationship, or would?
I don't see why it would.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, unless they, if you tell them don't put them in a room together alone, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not doing something like that, I don't see why.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, just to factor that into our decision making here.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
Thank
And you
you.
don't
It's good to have that opinion.
Yeah, you could do one and not the other. Like, I don't care. At the end of the day, your dogs.
Mhm.
But I don't, unless they did something blatantly wrong, I don't see why it would.
Okay.
Okay.
Right? Anything else?
I don't think so.
No, this has been super helpful. for
It
us,
has,
so we
yeah. Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much for your time and your information.
No worries. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, Maria will get in contact. Okay.
Okay,
Great.
that sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, thanks, Jesse.
Bye.